Hello, friends. Welcome back to another episode of Jonah in the Pod. If you didn't watch the last episode, you will be confused as what my background is. I am currently in Port Macquarie with the Word of Life team. Today we have a very special guest. We have someone that I haven't really met recently. I think last year I had the privilege of going to Queensland with him and doing some sort of ministries together, which is really cool. He's a fellow gamer. He has some really cool things on his heart that we'll probably get into today. Everyone, please welcome Chris. Chris from Word of Life.
Hey everyone.
If you want to sort of introduce yourself, what do you do, where you're from, how old you are, all that stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm Chris. My whole name is Christopher Sanford. I'm from America originally, from the state of North Carolina. So I lived there for my entire life. And so for the past 2 years, I've actually been living here in Australia as a Word of Life cross-cultural intern. So I am a 2-year graduate from the Word of Life Bible College in the States. And this is kind of like a continuation of that program.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, so you guys haven't met Darian yet, but I'm sure we'll get him on soon. Darian has been my friend since 2020. He was similar boat as Chris. And there's a lot of actually Americans that came to Australia for doing the same thing, same reason.
Yeah.
And there's also Aussies that went to America and then came back and same thing.
Fun fact, me and Darian were in the same room whenever we were in the Bible college. So
you guys like roommates?
We weren't roommates, but we were in the same room different years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so like he would like put his name in the rafters. And I like found it, and I was like, "Oh, I know that guy," which I didn't really know him at the time a whole lot. But then I ended up coming to Australia. Now I live with him basically. So yeah,
that's so cool. This it's going to be interesting. I don't know. I'll say anything about your sort of testimony in your life.
Sure.
I know you. Like I've only met you a couple of times.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you want to just go through your testimony, you can start from birth, you can start from teenagehood, yesterday, whatever it is. You go as in depth as you want, or as shallow as you want.
Sure.
Please feel free to share whatever you like.
Yeah. So I was born in a Christian home. My mom came from a family of Christians, and my dad was a first generation Christian. He got saved about 5-ish years before, five or less years before I was born. So it was very interesting growing up in that kind of dynamic. But through a kind of I'm trying to think of the word. There's like a singing group who came through my church when I was around. Excuse me. I was around like 5 years old, and it was kind of like a choir, but they did more stuff than that. So they sung, and then they also like did kids ministry as well. But their main thing was like a choir. Right. So when they would do their kids ministry, my younger brother, he's like a little less than a year and a half younger than me. He actually went forward to get saved. And to be honest, I don't remember a ton about what happened at that moment, but I do remember that, like, I have no memory of him doing that, so I must have been not paying attention at all of what they were saying, or it didn't click, or anything like that. But my brother went home, and he told my parents that he got saved and that he accepted Jesus into his heart.
You were 6?
Yeah.
So he was like 4.5.
Yeah, he's like 4.5. Yeah. And so we were really young, but he had a knowledge that he needed a savior and that Jesus was that savior. And so on a base level knowledge, he accepted Jesus Christ into his life. And I had no clue what any of that was. Like I said, I must have just not been paying attention to what they were saying at all. But I saw how happy that my parents were and how happy the people around me were, because we actually were hosting them at the time. We were hosting like 2 or 3 guys. And so I guess I saw how happy all of them were that he had made that decision. And so me being the older brother and the more superior brother, right? Anything that he could do, I could do, and I could do it better, right? And so I just went around saying, "Oh yeah, I'm saved too." I had no clue what I was saying, but yeah, that's just what I said. And then my parents were like, "Well, hold on a second. Like, do you actually know what that means?" I'm like, "No, I don't know." You know, and like I said, this is not even really first-hand knowledge because I don't even really remember a whole lot. But this is what my parents told me that happened. What I do remember is I remember my parents sat me down. This is kind of like where my memory clicks in without all this happening, where they sat me down and kind of explained what the gospel was, and they explained what it means to be saved, and to realize that you are a sinner, realize that you are needed a savior, and then that Jesus is that fulfillment, is that savior that we need, and if we accept him into our hearts, then we're saved essentially. And so, as much as a 5-year-old can, I accepted that truth into my life, and I asked Jesus to come into my heart, and I was a Christian. Now, it wasn't until probably 10 years later, when I was about 15, where it really started clicking, right? And there's a clear reason for that. So I went on my first missions trip to a place about five hours from where I live. It's called War, West Virginia. It is probably, I think it is the poorest town in America. And it's very eye-opening in the sense that it's like you don't realize in America this kind of poverty exists.
So this was a mission trip?
Yeah.
With your church? Or?
Yeah, with my church. Yeah. With my church. Right. We had been doing that for 10 or so years at that point. So my entire life, pretty much, they had been doing mission trips, and I've been hearing about it. And so this is something that was on my bucket list of things to do once I turned old enough. So I was really excited to go, just for the experience. I had no clue what God was going to do with my life through this trip. But up to that point, up to that 15-year-old kind of point, 14-year-old point, I had become a very, what's the word? Reserved child, I guess. I kind of kept to myself a lot. I didn't like to, talk to people. I didn't necessarily say a whole lot. The thing I say is that if I didn't have to talk to you, I didn't talk to you, right? And I think that mostly had to do with the fact that I was bullied as a kid, pretty heavily when I was in K-5, first grade, second grade, third grade, and fourth grade, to the point where mid fourth grade, my parents actually pulled me out and started homeschooling me, which ultimately was a net positive thing that happened to me, but it's also also negative because it kind of reinforced the shyness, because on top of me already being like that, I wasn't exposed to a lot of my peers as much as
social interactions.
as much as other people. And so like there would be days where I feel like I didn't talk like barely at all because I just like did my schoolwork, ate my food, and then I guess like played video games or read books. And that was like my life for, I don't know, till I was 14-ish, 15-ish. And because of that, there was like, I guess like a lot of selfishness in my own heart that I didn't realize that it was selfishness, because I realized during this trip that me being so reserved and quiet and in that being so judgmental of other people and just kind of like silently judging them for whatever they were doing, I was being extremely selfish. And that's what I realized during this trip. And through that, like God turned that kind of selfishness into like a heart of selflessness. I don't say that to say that, oh, I'm the perfect selfless guy, but like I developed a sense of service that I didn't have before that trip. Before God's work in my heart, to the point where like before that trip started, I really didn't want to volunteer for anything. But then after that trip happened, and then all the concurrent trips, I was like the first one to always put their hand up, like, "Hey, does anybody want to help out with this?" Like, yeah, 100%. To the point where a couple of times my leaders would be like, "Okay, does anyone except Chris want to help with this?" But yeah, it's just things like that where it's just like a kind of like total transformation. And in a sense, like I say I got saved at the age of 5, but part of me thinks that I may have actually like not even like I fully got saved and like not only had the knowledge of what God had done for my life, but I actually let that knowledge and that the understanding actually permeate and change my life at that mission trip.
That's cool. So like when you were 6-ish, you came to know Christ. You had a relationship. Was there much difference between? I know you were young. But was there much difference between before that and then after that?
Yeah, to an extent, because I knew that before that point, like I didn't really have like a knowledge of like my sin and all that kind of stuff. Like maybe I heard it, but it never really clicked. And so in a sense, it clicked then,
right? And
it's like, oh, like this is a thing, but it never really changed. Like
so my story is similar to that. It's like I was saved at a young age. But I think just thinking about it now, like there wasn't much change until years later. But what actually happened was there was an interest. There was like, because I was always going to Sunday school. I was always sort of my parents were Christians, so they were teaching me. But I think at that time, that's when I actually started. Maybe my actions didn't change much. And the way I was like living maybe didn't change much, but I was becoming more interested in, I guess, like listening and praying and all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
So maybe that's that's interesting. I never really thought about it, but that's probably what was actually happening. And then the change came much later when it's like, all right, look, I've been teaching you. Like God's like, I've been teaching you, but now it's time that you start living for me.
Absolutely.
That's really cool.
And so continuing on for that, I continued to go on those trips.
So what do the trips like entail? Evangelistic trips?
So essentially we would go to these areas. We didn't just go to War, West Virginia. We also went to places around North Carolina. And we ran sports camps, kind of like what we do here at Word of Life, but essentially we would get around 100 kids from the area, and we would run like a basketball camp, a tennis camp, American football camp. Usually because Americans don't really like soccer, so soccer usually is not a part of that. Sometimes it was, but it just depended on who was leading and like who had expertise. And so we had like karate as well, dance, crafts, that kind of stuff.
When you say camp, you mean like an overnight thing, or do you mean just like...
No, they would come during the day for like 4 hours, and then they'd go back, and then it was a week-long thing.
Okay, right.
Yeah. So they would do that, and then we would share the gospel during our like get together time. Like all the camps would be happening simultaneously, and then we'd have one like get together time where all 100 kids came together, where we did like a puppet show, where we would play songs, and then we have the puppets like act out the songs, where we had like actual guitars like hooked up to puppets that they could actually like strum. It was like very realistic. We had like drums with like tiny drums with a puppet that had sticks taped to his arms, and it was like hit him. It was very, very well put together, to the point where like we had someone that like their job was basically like just to make sure the puppets looked right. You know,
Okay,
like we took it really seriously.
Was it a big church or like?
So it was actually like it wasn't limited to just our church. It was actually like a group of churches. Right. So what it is that it was put on primarily by this organization called Christian Adventures. And so my youth pastor, he was the sort of, I can't remember what his title is. He's not the director, but he's like directly under the director.
Okay, yeah.
And so he played a really big role in that. And so we get a lot of people from our church. I think our church was probably like one of the primary people. And then the other primary group would be like people that are from this local Christian school that I went to for those first 4 years of my school. And so we got kind of like a mixed bag of people that went to church, and then we had some people that came to help that actually like didn't go to church at all. They just went to a Christian school. So there was a lot of really, really awesome moments where we had kids that would come from like the Christian school, or even our church, who kind of like me weren't really taking their faith seriously. And we would have, during the nights, we would have like worship nights, and during those worship nights, like a lot of barriers got broken. Like that's when it happened for me, where like I realized that I was really like trapped in my selfishness. And all those nights were really special, where like that's like the first time where I like actually felt like the presence of God. Like I can distinctly remember that point. It's just really special times.
It was the first mission trip you went on.
Yeah.
What got you to go to a mission trip?
So
you said you always say no to them, so like.
Well, I mentioned earlier where my church had been going on these trips for years, and so I grew up hearing about them, and I grew up kind of like always looking up to the teen group at that time, and being like, oh man, like one day I want to do that, just because I thought it was cool. Yeah, to go somewhere else with a bunch of teenagers, and just like hang out. And so that's essentially like why I was kind of like on my bucket list to just go and do that. So it wasn't really like, oh, I want to serve kids. Like it became that.
To begin with, it wasn't.
But to begin with, it was definitely just like, oh, I want to go have a great time with people that I know and meet new people and that kind of stuff.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah. So from that, I grew, like I said, kind of just like a heart of service. But the thing is that I would have these highs of camp or of these trips, and then I'm sure you've kind of experienced this as well, where you go on a camp or you go on a mission trip and you have these spiritual highs, but then you go back to like your normal life, and then it just kind of goes,
yeah.
And you're just kind of waiting for the next trip, and it kind of like continued that kind of pattern up until I was around, I think 18, where I was taking my faith seriously at that point, but I wasn't really doing a whole lot to grow. Like, I knew I needed to grow at that point, but I didn't really act on that need. And so because of that, once I graduated high school, I was still in this mindset of my plan, right? Because for my entire life, I had wanted to do something in computer technology, that kind of stuff. So I was actually going to go to do an information technology degree. And I actually went to community college for a year, 2 years almost. So part of that was in high school, because I did this like dual enrollment thing. So I had been there for quite a bit, but then about 5 months actually after I had graduated high school, I was still doing the community college and getting my like associate's degree. And I actually started taking classes that weren't like prerequisites. So just to background, so the way that college works in America is that they don't actually have you do a lot of things that have to do with the degree that you want to get. You have to do like a ton of prerequisites. So like math, calculus, physics, all that stuff. And from what I heard, like the Australian system makes a whole lot more sense in that way. But a lot of those first 2 years were just doing that. So I didn't get a lot of experience in the actual field that I wanted to do. Right. But once I started getting into that, I realized that like I didn't want to do it. So this goal that I had for my entire life, I finally started going and making strides towards doing that. And I was like, oh man, like I hate this. like straight up, I thought that. I was like, man, I could never see this doing for my job. And so at that point in my life, I was really lost. Like I was so confused. Like, God, this is all I ever wanted to do. What's going on? Why is this happening?
This was like 5 years ago.
This would have been 2018.
Yeah,
so 5 years ago. Yeah. I lose track of time because 2018 seems like so long ago, but at the same time, it feels like yesterday.
Yeah.
5 years ago. So at that point, I just kind of got to a point where I said to God, okay, God, I don't know what's going on. I don't know if you want me to continue doing this, if it's something that I don't like. And I realized that I've kind of been just doing what I want to do. And I haven't really been thinking about what your plans are for my life. And at that point, I also had a lot of really key people come into my life, kind of like advising me on this, and saying, like, I know this is what you wanted to do, but you're obviously not having, I guess, luck in that department. So really start asking God, like, what
is it?
What God wants me to do.
So it was always like a thing that, like, you wanted to get into that. Was it IT?
Yeah.
So you wanted to get into IT.
Yeah.
It's something you wanted to do, but you never, correct me if I'm wrong, you never actually asked God prior to this, like, what do you want me to do?
Absolutely.
And then once it sort of started, like, failing or whatever it was, it sort of forced you to, like, God forced your hand, I guess.
Yeah.
Be like, God showed you this isn't working, so he made you sort of be like, look to me.
Absolutely. And at that point, there's something that I forgot to mention along the way, in that around the same time that I went to my first missions trip, I also went to a Word of Life camp in Florida. And that was also a big moment in my life where I saw teenagers that were my age and older, that were like really, really sold out for the Lord, more so than I would see at our missions trips, because these are people that, specifically like my counselors, that had been in a Bible Institute for a year.
Right. It wasn't like the roller coaster you were experiencing, but it was like consistency.
Yeah.
Right, that's cool.
Yeah, and so because of that, like, I got really inspired to take my walk with God seriously. And so that's like just a little backtrack real quick to the now, or where I'm at currently, to where I was searching for what God wanted me to do with my life.
Yeah.
And so I finally got to the point I said, God, whatever you want me to do is what I'm going to do. So whatever you like put in front of my plate for me to do next, is I'm going to hop on it. And so I think it was either within a week or like 3 days or so, Word of Life Bible Institute actually called me up. And the reason they did that is because I went to those camps so long ago, and they keep like a record of the people that come, and then whenever they become like of age to go to the Bible Institute, they call them up. And so total like God thing wasn't really even on my mind. Like,
it was never a thought in
it was a thought, but I was, at the same time, I was kind of like, I don't want to do Bible college. Like, I'm not, like, I don't want to be a minister. I don't want to be a missionary, that kind of thing. Like, I want to do something in IT. And so even with that, even when I said, like, whatever you put on my plate, I'm going to do, like, it still wasn't even on my mind to an extent. But it's funny how God works, though, because all those people that I had in my life that I mentioned were kind of like advising me. They were all actually Word of Life graduates or had been involved with Word of Life at some point. So it's interesting how God works. Like my youth pastor was a graduate of Word of Life. And so it really helped confirm when that opportunity came, and I talked to all of them. They're like, oh yes, I know Word of Life. I've experienced it. Like, this is a perfect opportunity for you. I think you should pursue it.
So it was like every question that you were asking was getting answered.
Yeah. And so I signed up. I prayed. I was like, God, like I think this is what you want me to do. Like, if I get accepted, this is where I'm going to go. This is what I'm going to pursue. I don't know what you have for me, but I'm just going to do this 1 year program and see what happens, and then we'll go from there. And so I got accepted, and I went to Word of Life for a year. During that year, I really, really like exponentially grew, because I spent an entire year focused solely on reading the Bible and like applying that knowledge. The first year in the Bible Institute, they go through the Bible around like 3 times. Once with your like chapter titles assignment, where you have to read through every chapter of the Bible and kind of give like a summary of it. So that's one way we read through it. Another way is through the Bible survey, and like where we go like in depth, and we have our professor kind of like explain what each thing is talking about, the context of each thing, and then also we have our quiet time, which every day we would have like Bible readings that we would read, and then through doing that every day, we would essentially read through the Bible again.
Oh,
So
that's cool.
it ended up being like 3 different times we would read through the Bible in a year. And so through that, I learned so much about how God has worked through the Bible. And then also through that, learned God's plan for my life. And in a sense that I learned that God desires for me to be like a missionary wherever I go. Like a missionary isn't someone who like goes and tells people far away about the gospel. A missionary, what we're called to be, is a missionary to our Jerusalem, which is like the people that are closest to us, our Samaria, which are those people that maybe aren't as close to us, but are like kind of in our sphere a little bit, like on the outside fringes, and then to the ends of the earth as well, which would be the people that are who we would normally associate as missionaries.
Yeah, I always say this, and I'm sure I've said this in the podcast before, but full-time ministry, which I think both of us what we want to get into, whether that is missionary overseas or staying, I mean, you're in your home country, but like staying in Australia or going back to America, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Full-time ministry is anywhere we go. It could be at our workplace. It could be at like uni or school or college, or maybe we do go to overseas or whatever it is. Everywhere is our full-time ministry, and I think people look at missionaries and they like, I want to be like probably a missionary or full-time ministry. Not exactly sure what that looks like yet.
Yeah.
But people look at missionaries and they're like, wow, these guys are sacrificing their lives for Christ. They're sure. Like, I'm not downplaying missionaries at all.
Absolutely.
Because I want to be there.
Yeah.
But they are no greater than the person that's working a full-time job and still using that as their mission field.
Absolutely.
Like, it's all the same. We're living for God, whether that's at home, whether that's overseas, or like our Samaria or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Then I love that. We said, sorry, a little bit tangent, but
no, absolutely. Yeah. Something that's like probably like the biggest thing that I took out of that year, and so through that we went into summer camp. Where I was actually a counselor, and kind of that example that I had to myself, like 8 years prior, right? And so I got the opportunity to counsel kids that were my age at the time, and I was so privileged to do that and to be a sort of catalyst in a sense or an example to these kids in their lives to have a different, what am I trying to say? Like just being an example of what Christianity looks like to these kids who may not have ever experienced it, and showing that Christianity can be fun, Christianity can be accessible to anyone, and that Christianity is about a relationship with Christ and how that's not oppressive, and it's not necessarily about doing like a certain amount of things and that gets you to heaven. It's about the relationship and not like the actual works.
I love that. I think as I guess Protestants or born again believers, whatever you like to call it.
Sure.
We know that we're not saved by works.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because I think a lot of people, definitely a lot of the people in the world, think like we're saved by works and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And also like they need to sort of, I think we also have this, I definitely have this sometimes where I need to fix my life.
Absolutely.
So I can go to God.
Yeah.
He literally tells us, come as you are.
Yeah.
He doesn't say stay as you are because he doesn't want that. Come as you are, and then he will actually do the work in us.
Yeah.
And I think if anyone's watching that is struggling, because this is something that I've frequently struggle with. Of like, I've sinned or I feel inadequate or whatever it is. And then I'm like, I need to sort of fix my life so I can go to God. Or, I don't want to say sorry to God because it's like something I'm continuously struggling with, or whatever it is. But it's like, no, go to Him, and He will set the renewal of your mind. He will set your heart straight. All this stuff. So I love it.
It's interesting that kind of concept of how we want to like fix ourselves. And it's interesting when you think about where that desire comes from, because if you look at history and you look at the different religions, like we as humans have like this desire to do some kind of works, and so that's where that comes from. Like if you look at like the core belief system of like every religion, it kind of comes back to this concept of animism, which is like there's a some kind of deity. In order to win the deity's favor, you have to do some kind of favor, right? And that's something that's like everywhere. So even like the uncontacted tribes that have just existed for years and years and haven't been talked about, they have like the base form of animism, where like, and this is the things you hear, like where like there's spirits and different things like that. In order to please the spirits, I have to like
do this,
jump around the fire, or something to that extent. And most of the religions today are just a like more complex form of that. And in a sense, a lot of Christianity today has become that as well, where people misunderstand what the gospel is, and they say, "Oh, I have to read my Bible every day. I have to do all that," and it's kind of infiltrated Christianity a bit. So it's very interesting, that concept.
It's like I think the worldview on Christianity is like you have a standard that you have to reach. Like you have to be this, you have to be good, you have to be this. I'm like, sure, like there is an aspect that Christians should have a standard. It shouldn't be a low standard. We should have the highest standard, if anything. But I guess because of maybe the way we act and what we do, maybe it's on us that the world has a view like that, because it's actually, this isn't from us. It's not because this is our way to heaven. It's because we actually see truth in what we're reading and what we're God himself, and like this is what we want to be doing because God tells us to, and we love God. We have a relationship with Him. And I always say this, but like, if you love someone, let's say you have a girlfriend or your mom or your siblings, whatever it is, you would want to live for them. Like you don't want to just like, oh yeah, love you, mom, and then just never talk to her or never actually listen to her, whatever it is.
Absolutely.
But having, like, God has a perfect relationship with us because of what He did for us. Sometimes we may not feel that. So sometimes it makes sense that we feel that's like that way. But if we do feel that perfect relationship, which we should, again, it's not our half. It's His perfect relationship. He did everything. We should want to do everything for Him because He has already done everything for us. And He's still doing everything for us, actually. I keep going on these random tangents, but
it's good. It's good. I think that's a really good concept that kind of like even before I went to the Bible college, I didn't really understand that concept of like, yes, our faith is not by works, but because of our love for Christ and because of the love that He showed us, it creates a desire in our own hearts to do those works, but those works innately do not save us. And so that concept always like confused me as a kid. But
it's just what's the word? It's a example. No, it's a, what's the word? It just shows that you are saved when you do like sort of live for Christ and not in a fake manner or anything. But when you genuinely like live for Christ, that's I guess the way people can tell that you're saved, or
absolutely
yourself you can tell that you're saved. You see that like 180. It's cool because me and you both, we didn't see that complete 180 until a bit later.
Yeah.
But still, we were saved from back then, and then God was slowly building us into that 180 where
absolutely
you got to fix up.
Yeah,
that's cool.
So, back to where I was. So I'm in camp. I'm enjoying my experience. And at that point, I really still didn't know what God wanted me to do. There's a second year program that I had heard a lot about, and I was interested in doing, but I wasn't sure if that's what God wanted me to do. And I was very, very aware of where I was 2 years ago, in the sense that I was doing my own thing, and I didn't want that to happen again. And so I was very, very much hesitant to commit to a second year program, because I felt oh, maybe this is what I want to do and not what God wants me to do. But through the experiences that I had at camp, and through seeing how God could work through me, I through a lot of prayer in that, during that time. Excuse me.
It's all right. I'll just say while he blows this, their Bible college. So when they say Bible college, is very different to, I guess, I know Word of Life was a Bible Institute, is very different to our Bible colleges. Because, you do Bible college now in Australia?
So technically I don't. Technically I've already graduated.
But you've done it in Australia?
I haven't, actually. I did it in America.
Right. So from what I've heard, because I haven't been to the American the Word of Life in America, but we don't actually have accreditations at Word of Life here.
Sure.
So we do something with ACCS. And
Yeah.
It's a lot sort of like a uni, but just Bible based, I guess. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of essays and not exams, there's essays, assignments and stuff. But for you guys, it wasn't much of that, from what I understand.
Yeah, so there wasn't a ton of traditional type of studying, in the sense that there's a lot of written work. There were a lot of exams. So we had an exam on every topic that we covered. So it was more traditional in that sense. But there wasn't a lot of writing in that, which is what a lot of colleges focus on.
More a practical exam. Not practical exam, practical.
And we had a lot of practical hands-on requirements too, where the camp side of things is actually a part of our grade, and then we had weekly what's the word? Not service assignments. We had weekly missions assignments where we would go to a church around our area and help with their kids program or something to that extent.
Yeah, that's something that I would much prefer to do than study, because I hate studying the traditional studying, doing essays and assignments. To be honest, I don't really learn from that.
Yeah.
So I would love to do something more practical.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of finding something like that. It's tough, especially in Australia.
Yeah.
I haven't really looked that deeply, but yeah. But that's cool. Sorry, I just thought I'd make that sort of clear, because when you said Bible college, people probably thought
oh yeah, stuff, absolutely. Yeah.
More practical stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I was considering it, and then through my experiences in the camp, I decided that this is where God wanted me to go, and He just kind of confirmed that through the people that I talked to about it, and also through my own prayer life. I really just felt the Lord leading me to go. And so I went, and what happened was, at that point, I still wasn't planning on doing any missions outside of my own town. My ideal life at that point was still not leaving my home state, leaving.
Isn't Word of Life in New York or Florida?
New York and Florida. Yeah.
Weren't you already Out of state.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So even before I went to Florida, though, like I still wanted to stay in my home state.
Right.
I wanted to live like maybe an hour from my parents or where like all my family was. I didn't really want to go anywhere else.
Too far, yeah.
Like I'm a homebody, I guess, in that sense, or I was. But little by little, God was working in me in the sense that I went to Florida, and then the next year I went all the way up to New York for second year.
Right.
And so that's just another way God was kind of working on my heart slowly kind of transitioning me from that kind of mindset. And so I still at that point was still in that mindset and not wanting to do like long-term missions or overseas missions or anything like that. So I just went to the second year again with the attitude of like, I don't know what you're trying to do here, God. I don't know where you're leading me, but I know this is where you want me to be, so this is where I'm going to go. And so what second year is for Word of Life Bible College is it kind of takes all the things you learned in first year, which is like I said, like three times reading through the Bible, like just heavy like knowledge, like cramming it down your throat of knowledge of the Bible. And then the second year is like applying that knowledge to the world around you. Right. So we had lots of classes of like biblical manhood, biblical womanhood. I mean, I didn't obviously take that because I'm not a woman, but
still learning about it.
Yeah. But like biblical leadership, just like applying that to the world around you. And that also was like really heavily focused on missions, because ultimately the message of the Bible is that we're to spread the gospel with those around you. And so that's what the primary message of like most of our classes had to do with. Right. And through that, and through a specifically one class, which was like, it was called intercultural issues, but it really didn't have anything to do with intercultural issues. It was really more about missions mobilization.
Okay.
It's really funny to think about, because like the guy was like the best professor ever. He was like absolutely hilarious. And the only problem is that he didn't teach anything about intercultural issues. And so there was people there that was really wanting to know about that topic. And they were kind of like upset because it was like, oh, this is not intercultural issues. But I was like eating it up though, because even though it wasn't what it was supposed to be about, I still heavily benefited from it.
So it was a mission or mobilization. What did you say? Sorry.
Yeah, mission mobilization. Okay. So like, this guy was like a professional mobilizer for missions, and what that means is like presenting the need of people needing the gospel, and then also presenting the how, in a sense, and the why of why missions is important and that kind of stuff. Okay. And so, for example, one of the things that he got us to do is he told us to set an alarm on our phones for 10:02 p.m. And every time that alarm went off, we were supposed to pray Luke 10:2, which says, the harvest is plenty, but the laborers are few. Yeah. And just that kind of verse kind of became like the mindset I had for that entire year. And that whole class was kind of just like that verse sums up that whole class and really my whole year. And so because of that, I had this internship that I'm doing now come down the line. And I was like, guys, is this what you want me to do? I'm not sure. Like I said, I was still in that phase where I was, and I still am now in a sense, where I was very, very wary of like me doing my own thing, and not doing God's thing. So it took very good care to make sure that my decision was what God wanted me to do. And so about 3/4 of the way through the year, I said, okay, I think this is where God wants me to do. It's kind of like 2 weeks after that class that was really impactful. I kind of like signed up for it. And through that process, I had a couple places to choose from. And this is where I'm going to go back a little bit to the first year. So first year, first day, or even before I got to the first day of first semester, we had a group chat where all the incoming students were in, and we were just kind of like discussing and like getting to know each other a little bit online. And there's this guy whose name was Scott, and I learned that he was Australian. And for whatever reason, I don't really know why. Maybe it was just because he was Australian and I thought that was cool. But I just had this notion that I needed to be friends with this guy. Never met him before. He literally only said like 3 or 4 things in the chat. Like he wasn't very vocal in the chat. But I just had this notion I had to be friends with him. And it ended up being the first day that I get there, we have like a week of RA training, which is resident assistant. So kind of like training for the people that were potentially going to be leading our rooms. And I actually got to be in the same room as him during this week of RA training. And we literally like connected instantly.
Is this Scott? Like
Scott Morrison? Yeah,
okay.
yeah. So
right.
the guy that not the prime minister, but the guy who works here at Work Life.
I think he might be the next podcast. I don't know. We're supposed to be recording it tomorrow. So
Yeah.
So maybe him or Darren will be the next podcast.
Yeah. So like instantly connected, and we. I was actually going through a little rough patch in the sense that I was having a tough time adjusting to. I think that's what was happening was I was having a rough time adjusting to the college atmosphere of like having a lot of people around, because I was still very much like an introvert, even though God had worked through me. I was still very much introverted and still working on like social skills in a sense. And so I was having difficulties that kind of stemmed from that. And he really helped me through that time, which just giving me exactly what I needed to hear at that moment. And that really just connected with us. And so when RA training week ended, they gave us like a list of who the RAs were going to be, who they had chosen to be.
What is RA again? Sorry.
So resident assistant. So they would. It's basically like the people that are in charge of all the rest of the students.
Okay.
So we would have like a room or a cabin essentially that we would stay in, and then there would be one RA per cabin that kind of like looked after us and made sure that like our lives weren't falling apart particularly, and then also helping us grow as well. And so I did not get chosen to be a RA, but Scott did. And we had part of our interview process was we had to like, they asked us a question like, if you were to be if you weren't picked to be a RA, who would you want to be your RA? And I said Scott. And later I found out that Scott actually said he wanted me to be his RA, which I thought was really funny as well. Just because we connected so closely, it just worked. And so what they ended up doing is putting us in the same cabin. And so we had a great time getting to know each other through that, and then through that whole year. And then funnily enough, he didn't necessarily meet his wife through me, but I was definitely a part of them like getting to know each other more because I mentioned before we had like missions like teams where we go out to churches and different things.
Yeah.
And my team lead is now his wife.
Okay.
So what happened was I invited him to go to church with us because he was looking for a church to go to.
Yeah.
And so all of us as a team were already going. And so I was like, you just come with me, right? And so I think he met her like in passing,
right.
sort of, not really talked to her a whole lot at that point, but they had interacted a little bit. And then we had a dinner or a lunch with the pastor that week, just to like introduce ourselves because it was like the first week, or second week, and we were all like sitting around talking to each other, and then like a bunch of us were like talking to the pastor, but Scott and Abby, who was her name, they were literally just talking to each other like the entire time. To the point where like everyone else had finished eating and were like getting ready to leave, and they were just still like talking. And I was like,
"It's gonna happen.
That's gonna happen. That's a thing."
Yeah.
And then, lo and behold, like 6 months later, they were engaged. I think it was really fast.
It's like COVID time, right?
Yeah, like right when COVID hit.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just really interesting how all that worked. All that to say is that. I got to know Scott really well, and became really good friends with Abby and also Scott. And they went up with me to second year, and I hung out with them a lot more in second year. And so when the opportunity of this cross-cultural internship came, one of the options was Australia, and so I was just kind of like. Sure, like I'll put that on one of my lists. Like I'll tick the box of yes, I'm interested in this country because like I had heard from Scott like all the time that Australia Word of Life always looking for help, always looking for more people to come help out. And so I was like, that'd be kind of cool, I guess. But it really wasn't like my main focus. Like I wasn't like.
It was like a passing thought, sort of?
Yeah. So I listed that as Australia, and I also listed New Zealand, and I think, I don't remember what the other one was, but, so we were setting up Zoom calls to meet with the directors of every field.
Yeah.
And I met with the Australian ones first. His name is Martin Garcia. If people... I've watched the podcast. I'm guessing this is like the episode after that.
Yeah.
And just like instantly, as soon as I started talking to him, I knew that Australia was where I wanted to, or where God wanted me to be, just because I could see not only his passion, but I could see how God could use me in the ministry that Australia had. So legitimately, I didn't even talk to the other directors, which is really funny because I ended up meeting like the director or one of the higher ups of the New Zealand team about a little less than a year ago, and I feel like if I had met them and I had talked to them at the time, I may have actually gone to New Zealand. So it's just really like a God thing that we just connected right away.
Yeah. Martin's a convincing guy.
Absolutely, yeah, he really is.
Yeah.
And so. Australia. That was what I decided to go with. And so
You were just here last year or 2 years ago?
Last year. Yeah.
Last year.
So
accent.
Yeah.
Last year.
So I had like a 6-month period after I graduated from the second year program where I raised support to go to Australia. So it wasn't necessarily like me paying to be there. I was like kind of faith-based, sort of going around and asking people if they would consider being on my prayer team and being on my financial support team. So that was also a big time of growth because I don't like asking people for money.
Yeah.
Like it's just not a thing to do, but it's very interesting when you look at like things in the Bible, and there's different examples of how people, I guess, raise funds for themselves, and asking, going around and presenting your need is not necessarily the only way, but it is a way that's actually biblical, and that's something that I think was really key in that time to really help me secure or like assure me that I was doing the right thing by going in and like asking people, because that was like a big thing for me. I was like, I don't want to do this. Like, why is this a thing? Why do I need to do this type of thing? But yeah,
I'm going to stop you there just for a second.
Sure.
Look, out of Life Australia, we have a lot of people that, I guess, I'm not going to say struggle for money, because I mean God provides in all.
Absolutely.
But we have a lot of we have a mission trip coming up.
Yeah.
I have the privilege of joining you guys.
Absolutely.
There are some people that may be struggling for money still.
Yeah.
But even apart from this mission trip, I think supporting them is so, like, I guess, such a gift from us to them, and
Absolutely.
from God to us, I guess. Because I mean, it's greater to give than it is to receive, as the Bible says. Yeah. So if anyone that's watching wants to sort of maybe help out in any sort of way, whoever it is, whether it's Chris or whoever it is, please let me know. Sorry, I thought I'd just put this in here. If you wanted to go to a Mongolia trip, I'm sure that, I don't know who has the money or whatever. Yeah. I'm sure some people need some help. But if you want to be, I guess, support for them, not just for the trip, but for their lives, I guess. Yeah. Because missionaries aren't, I guess, it's not easy, because you're reliant on other people's, I guess, funding. Yeah. Sometimes I can switch like that. Sure. So if you're interested, please let me know. If God puts on your heart, there's no forcing or anything. But if God puts you on your heart to sort of help these guys, then please let me know.
I have a webpage that has like information on what I do with Word of Life, and then also a way to give. So if any of you guys are interested in doing that, I can send it Jonah's way, and he can send it to you guys.
I'll put it in the description.
Yeah.
If you don't mind.
Yeah, sweet. Yeah, that works perfectly. Yeah. So, there's just a time of support raising, which is a very big time of growth for me. Just learning to trust in God's plan for my life, and learning to trust that if God wants me to be somewhere, that He's going to provide the funds. Ended up getting all the funds that I need, plus a little extra. So that was really awesome to see. Cool. And then I got here last year in 2022, January, and I've been here ever since.
That's really cool. That's sick. For now, so something we do in this podcast. I don't think you've watched any episodes. That's fine. We actually, so you might have seen the Polaroid camera, like what's going on. Yeah. So we actually have, in the middle of an episode, or towards the end, really. Yeah. I get the guest to take a Polaroid. Okay. And at home I have like a corkboard behind me that has all the photos. Okay. So I'd love for you to take a Polaroid. You can do it any sort of way you like. All right. There is an auto timer if you want to put it down somewhere. Then. Okay. The one rule I have is that you have to be in it. Yeah, sure. It can just be of you if you want, or it can be of us, or whatever it is. So there's flash. You can do all the same. There's auto timer. Yeah. So whatever you prefer, you can. And then I have sort of a topic or a question.
Yeah, absolutely. So I never used one of these before. How do you?
There's a red button.
The red button.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the big red button. That makes sense, right?
Yeah. So I can jump in or whatever?
Yeah.
I'll see you guide.
Yeah, you can jump in. I guess I don't know how.
Because everyone has sort of me in the background, but like me.
Yeah. So how do we do this?
So you just do you want auto time or do you want to?
Yeah, I can hold it, I guess, or whatever. So
then just
no,
press it. Yeah. No.
Is it turned off? Maybe it turned off.
That's it turned off.
It turned off. I think I might have hit it with my finger.
It's all right.
Yeah. All right. There we go.
Right. So now we keep it in the dark. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oopsies.
Oh yeah. There we go.
I'll just keep it in the dark. I'm just gonna put it in the copy.
Yep.
I'm gonna put it. All right.
Sweet.
So that'll probably take like 10-15 minutes to sort of get ready.
Yeah.
In the meantime, we spoke about this yesterday a little bit, but Chris has it on his heart to, what is it? How do I say it? He has it on his heart to use. So he I mentioned it in the beginning that he's a gamer. You haven't really spoken about gaming. He's said a bit about IT, but he has it on his heart to use gaming, use it as a platform, use it as a ministry sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's really cool because I personally love when there's sort of like, I said this yesterday, but gaming isn't a niche thing anymore. But I love it when people use like sort of niche things to sort of evangelize or to glorify God.
Yeah.
So I want, like, if you don't mind, if you can just share about that a little bit. Probably going to have the same conversation we had yesterday. But
sure, absolutely.
Okay. I think it's really cool. Like, I find it admirable that something like this is really, really cool.
Yeah. So, kind of, this all kind of started a little bit before I went to Word of Life for my first year. And like, kind of really began stirring during first year and during second year. I've been a gamer my entire life. I kind of touched on it for a second, but not really. Yeah. But it's been like a really big part of my life, and all throughout that process, or all throughout my life, I've had this like kind of desire to play games, right? And I'm sure like a lot of the listeners that can empathize with that kind of desire, right? But with that, I have a younger brother that I mentioned, and he has like this really big desire to do music, to do production and that kind of stuff. He actually just got a job to be a worship leader at a like mega church with like thousands of people. Okay, and so like that's his thing, right? And so my thing has always been gaming, and so with that, especially with the time of when I was growing up, in that gaming was still sort of that niche type of thing that was like sort of a lot of people were getting into at that point, but there were still a lot of people that were just like, oh, this is like nerd, that like it's not for gaming, isn't for everyone, it's for people that are nerds and just sit at home and like, you know, whatever, that kind of like a negative sort of connotation to it. And so
it still has that.
It does to an extent, but not as prevalent, I think. But essentially, I got to a point where, like when I was younger, I would be like really unhappy because, like I would see my brother, getting like all this praise, and I would see my brother like get all of
the encouragement.
Because he was doing this thing, and there wasn't a whole lot of encouragement for me doing that thing. And like I completely understand where that was coming from, and I completely see why people did that. But at the time, it really just it hurt, because I wanted to do my thing, and I wanted to be encouraged to do that thing, kind of like the same way. And when I ask people, kind of like why does he get the support and I don't get the support? Like one of the main things was like, gaming can't be used as a ministry. And that's a totally valid point, especially with the mindset that people were looking at it, and were looking at it at the time, and still look at it to an extent today, that gaming can't be used as a ministry. And in my rebellious sort of mindset, I'm correct and you're not, like the typical like teenager response that they know everything, right? It's like, oh, why not? Why can't it be used as a ministry? Like, sure it can. And I really didn't think about it at the time, but then like later on I was like, wait a minute, like that's actually kind of true. Like, why couldn't it be used as a ministry? Like it's just like it's the same vein of like what I've been doing the past years of sports camps. Like it's just a different version of that. And so from that, I guess, sense of rebellious state grew an actual passion to do ministry from a video game context. And so I've slowly kind of been developing an idea of what that could look like, right? And a lot of what I see now is a lot of gamers that are Christian are kind of turning to streaming. Like there's one example in Australia. His name is Pastor Scar. He was a pastor, I think, and he decided to take that to the gaming space in Twitch and start streaming. And I think that's a really, really admirable and awesome way to do things. But for me personally, the way that I see myself doing it, I guess, would be having a internet cafe, in a sense, and it's the internet cafe from the American sort of standard. So internet cafes in Australia, from what I've seen, are more like
it's computers.
Everything is computers, and it's just computers, and it's more focused on the like internet side of an internet cafe. But in America, internet cafe sort of focuses more on the cafe side, where like there's like computers sometimes, but mostly like this is a space with internet, and it's more of like a chill space, more focused on the cafe part, right? So having like the American version of an internet cafe as like a front to just get people in, and then with the purpose of sharing the gospel with the people that come, because there's a very, very much, I guess, untapped group of people that are the gaming community, where a lot of them have experience with churches, and it's been bad for one reason or another, and so they've decided that they'd rather just sit at home, play video games instead of going to church, which is like from the perspectives that I've seen, it makes sense, in a sense, of why they're like that. And so
they don't see if you don't see the worth in church, then it's just a place that's less fun, and more boring than gaming or whatever.
Absolutely, And so like there's a very, very large group of people that are just kind of being not ministered to, and even with non-traditional ways of ministry, sort of like the sports camps, like that still doesn't necessarily reach those types of people, because it's still the same thing of, oh, why go physically exert myself? Or why do I go interact with people, or something to that extent, when I can just stay home and play video games, right?
Yeah.
And so there's still that demographic of people that just are, on a sense, like unreached. And so having that space and having a place where gamers can come to and just chill, interact with other gamers, is something that I really want to do. And then also having, within that space, having maybe like tournaments. So like maybe having a Super Smash Bros. Tournament. That's like a fighting game for maybe people who don't know what it is. It's like a Nintendo, like Mario and Pikachu going at it and fighting. It's not one of those gory ones. It's like one of the really like peaceful, in a sense, ones. So it still like maintains like a family friendly atmosphere. But having a space where we can have a tournament for that game, and then have it be sponsored by a church, or have it be sponsored by a Christian organization of some sort, so that one, there's no entry fee for the prizes, so it gets more gamers in that maybe they don't have funds to do that, and just in general, something that's free is going to be more inviting than something you have to pay for.
For sure.
Like my dad has a saying, if it's free, it's me. So like that's kind of like the idea of that. Going to that, and then having that free tournament and getting people in, and then using that as a space to be like maybe at a halftime or right before we're about to give out the prize or something like that. Be like, hey guys, this tournament was sponsored by such and such a church. And the reason that it was sponsored was because of this great message of the gospel that we want to share with you guys real quick. And then just sharing the gospel in a way that they can understand, maybe relating it to some kind of video game thing or references and that kind of stuff. And something that can like really reach them. And I that's kind of like the vision that I have. And then on top of that, not only having it be a space for unbelievers to hear about the gospel, but also for people that are Christians who maybe aren't as experienced with having evangelism, like maybe on the street or with their friends at school or whatnot, where the connection is like hard to make into that gospel conversation. Like it's hard to translate someone you meet on the street. You're like, oh, hey, how's your day going? And it's like, oh, let me tell you about the gospel. And it's kind of like abrupt transitioning from that. And there's really no like connection. But having them come into that space and connecting with people through video games, and then having them be able to say, oh, like, what did you think about what that guy said up there? Or what's your opinion on Jesus? Or something to that extent, to where it makes it easier for them to understand and do evangelism, because they're connecting with someone over a video game rather than trying to, artificially make the connection through like small talk, which gamers are notoriously not good at doing.
So you're breaking the barriers. I guess like you're breaking the barriers from gamers to Jesus. Hopefully that's the main goal. Also from believers to non-believers. That's so cool. And I said this to you yesterday, but I was like, the first person that sort of probably thought we could use sport for God's will and to preach the gospel. He probably got so much like pushback from it. Like,
oh yeah, I'm sure.
That's of the world. Like, what do you mean? You can't do that.
Yeah.
But now look at it. That's like one of the biggest forms of ministry there is.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I would like a lot of people wouldn't understand gaming, and I think as people that currently game, but we've gone through teenagehood gaming, everything.
Yeah.
I think it does. There is a point where it becomes a problem where that's all you're doing.
Absolutely.
But what a lot of people don't understand is that that's an escape for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
That's their way to sort of get away from, I guess, bullying or escape reality that they just don't like living, or maybe it's just out of boredom. Maybe it's actually they build friends there. There's a lot of different things that gaming is used for. A lot of the time it is turned for the worse, where people become addicted, people rage, people do all these stuff, and it makes sense why people have that image of gaming, because it's not the best place. But when it is treated well, when it is used for God, it is such a blessing. And literally, like I've used gaming for my ministries. Like I've done a live stream that obviously I gamed. No one cares about the gaming. But even outside of the live stream, the way I got close to my youth kids wasn't from me talking to them on a Friday for 10 minutes. I was like, let's play some games. And it might not be like, I know they're going to watch this because I'm very good friends with them now. So like, it might not be the reason, like, my most sort of enjoyable thing to do. Like, start early on because I'm like, this is going to be awkward. I don't know how to do this. But a lot of the connections I've made with those who are now like some of my best friends. A lot of the connections I made was through gaming. Because through anything else, it's like I'm not into what they're into. They're not into football. They don't have the passion for Christ that I have, maybe. So how else? That's the most simple way to do it. I spoke to someone that was getting into youth leading. They were a female, so I was like, look, for me, what I do, I find just one common thing, whether that is sports, and like I'm lucky enough to enjoy both sporting and gaming. So it's like if someone enjoys sports, I'll jump on that and be like, that's where I'm going to sort of focus on that, and then the relationship grows. For a lot of people from my old church, and like I said, the friendships I have now, they were all from gaming. And for the female that I was talking to, she's like, it's tough because girls don't really have that kind of like, they don't have sports, they don't have games, they don't have that. Maybe they can relate over a TV show, but you can only talk about a show so much. So honestly, like, I love it because gaming, again, it has terrible connotations. And I mean, for some of the right reasons. But it is used in such a good way that if used well, like I said, I've used it. And without it, some of these kids that I've been sort of playing games with, whatever, who knows where they would have been if they didn't have someone to pour into their life. Honestly, I love it so much.
One of the things that kind of helped me realize that gaming can be used as a ministry is actually like seeing it work out in a way similar to you. Now, it wasn't more like in person. It was more people that I met online that I became really good friends with because of gaming. And we connected because of a shared interest in gaming, and specifically Overwatch. Right. Like I had like a lot of friends that we played Overwatch with like every day.
To find friends on Overwatch is tough.
I know, right? It's a very toxic game usually. But I lucked out to find really great
that's cool.
people to hang out with. And just through doing like games, like just interacting with them and then like talking with them about maybe what was going on with their life and that kind of stuff. It gave me the platform several times to share the gospel with them, to the point where they literally like at one point like asked me, oh, like, hey, what do you believe about all this stuff? Because they were talking about how like the world is so terrible, and they don't see hope and that kind of thing, and just like that was a way, just through that I was able to share the gospel with them. Now they didn't necessarily accept the gospel in that moment, and I shared the gospel with them other times, and they still did not like accept it, but still the seed was planted, right? Sure. And that's only like a micro sense, and I could see potential in that to grow.
Yes, some of the most meaningful conversations have been when I've been playing games.
Absolutely,
like whether it's with a believer or a non-believer, whatever it is. Like we're just hopping it used to be a party chat, now it's Discord, but we're just hopping a party chat. We're just talking about trash. Like it usually starts with that, and then sometimes you just have like a serious deep conversation. It's like, this is so cool. I had a conversation with one of my friends about like the differences between Orthodoxy and like Protestants. Really cool conversation. And that wouldn't have happened if there was no like platform to do it. So gaming is a massive platform. Something that sports is probably still bigger, but gaming is getting to that level of size. So I honestly amazing, and I'm excited to see what I'll definitely want to be involved with whatever it is. I'll help out where I can. And if anyone's watching that have ideas or want to help out, then please send it my way. I'll forward it to Luke.
Absolutely. This is something that
Chris makes a roommate.
Luke, this is something that I really it's like really in like the pure conceptual phase, and I really don't have like a whole lot of practical ideas on how to execute it. So if any of you guys have like anything you want to any ideas to talk to me about, I'm all for it. You can pass it on to Jonah and pass it on to me, whatever. So I'm always looking for ideas on maybe how to do this.
I'm showing you the Polaroid, and he can continue on to you.
So like I have a couple people from the U.S. who expressed interest in like in supporting me in this endeavor. So if any of you guys have any ideas or thoughts, I'm more than willing to listen, I guess. So
the Polaroid, it's a bit blurry, but it's still good. But I always say one and done because the film is expensive.
Of course.
So, we have a Sharpie for you to sign it.
Okay.
I would not recommend you using your signature.
Okay.
You never know who's watching. Sure. People can.
Sure. Yeah. Well, luckily enough, my signature is very
all over the place.
So it's going to be very hard to replicate, I guess.
I remember I went to like a football event sort of thing. I was actually volunteering at the football event. It was honestly one of the funnest events I've been to. But they had like a gaming station. They had like 6 or 8 PlayStations. It was all FIFA because of the football event.
Of course,
and it was just fun. Like we had a tournament. I wasn't in it because I was hosting. I was helping out. Honestly, like people rock up.
Absolutely.
And you can use that. Even if people don't want to hear it. I mean, they're at the event, so they have to.
Absolutely, there's a captive audience.
So this Polaroid, very cool. You can see. This is cool.
Sweet.
I think we can end there. Thank you so much, Chris.
Absolutely.
Actually, before we end, I get people to, if you can think of one, if you had advice for anyone that's watching, or for me, or for yourself even.
Sure.
If you want to give that advice, I know it's a lot spur of the moment, but whatever you have on your mind.
Sure. Yeah. So I I kind of have been talking about it as I've been going on. It's a really big part of my story, but I can't stress enough the importance of letting God control your life, letting God's will be your will, and choosing to deny yourself and choosing God instead of that. And that can come in many forms. It doesn't necessarily doesn't necessarily specifically mean like doing what God wants you to do in the sense of going to Bible college. It does include that, but it can be as simple as taking time out of your day to spend time in the Word, do prayer for friends, or doing a missions trip. Like it could be something really simple as that, or it could be something as, I guess, monumental as giving yourself to like long-term missions work in a country that you don't even know. You know.
Okay, but I think all Christians have some things that is their will. Their will is not to sin.
Absolutely.
Like, I mean, God's will for them is not to sin.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, obviously we're going to fail it, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
But there is stuff like God wants you to spend time with Him daily.
Yep.
And He wants you to read His Word, wants you to talk to Him. Things like that we should be definitely doing. But yeah, I love that advice of not being in control, because it's extremely tough when there's things out of your control. Especially as humans, we love to be in control.
Absolutely.
Of everything that we want to sort of pick our job. We want to obviously pick our life and all this stuff. Like, these are things that are normal. Like, we need to pick them. But let God control, and everything will just fall into place. I might not feel it, but like everything will just make sense.
Yeah, and one thing in that, something that I learned from my second year. One of my professors told me that a way to look at God's will is basically if you are in the Word daily, and if you are having a constant like growing relationship with Christ, God's will become your will, and there won't be a question of, oh, is this what you want me to do, God? But because you'll constantly be in prayer and constantly hearing from God, from His Word, you'll, in a sense, know what God's will is for your life. So, yeah, that's another.
What's the verse? I don't know why it's in my mind, where it's like, He will give you the desires of your heart.
Something to that effect,
It's not actually our desires at the moment. But it's more like, transform our heart to have the desires of your heart.
Yeah. So
our hearts are aligned and we have the same desires.
Absolutely.
And He'll give that to you.
Yeah.
It's really cool. I love that advice. Honestly, you said to me before, you're not very well spoken, but I think you did a fantastic job.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I enjoyed listening to your story. This is the first time I've heard it.
Yeah.
Honestly, a privilege. So thank you for hopping on. Excited to see where, God sends you. What He's doing in your life is amazing already. What is on your heart is amazing. What He's done already in your life is amazing. So I'm excited to see what continues in your life. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you all for watching. If you feel like you want to donate, I'll leave Chris's link in the description. But also, if you want to donate to someone else, or if you want to donate to Mongolia trip, maybe I'll edit this out, but have you raised funds for... Yeah. You're good on Mongolia front, okay. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'll leave that in there. But Chris will still need help for his missional life. Yeah. If it's on your heart to help, if you can't help financially, start praying for our life team. Pray for me. Pray for like all of us, because we all need prayer. Yeah. And prayer people say it's the least I can do, but it is the most you can do.
Absolutely,
it's more important than your finances.
100%.
Yeah. So yeah, well, I thank you all for watching. Thank you again, Chris, for coming on. If I don't like asking for likes and subscribers.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
But honestly, I'm going to ask you guys for likes and subscribe to like and subscribe, because I love the stories that have been told on this podcast.
Yeah.
So if more people, when you like and when you subscribe, when you comment, all that stuff, it gains traction and it will reach a lot more people. So, the more people that hear these stories, the more people that can be impacted by them. So share it, like, subscribe. My mom had a goal of reaching hundreds of subscribers, but I don't ask for subscribers, so they don't really go up. But yeah, thank you all for watching. Thank you, Chris, again. Thank you all, and peace.